Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the Injury Report podcast. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about some key injuries in the NFL and their potential impact from Week 5 as we move into Week 6. And unfortunately for the Chiefs and for Jamaal Charles, once again, looking like an ACL tear for him. And it's obviously he's going to be out for the rest of the season and be back next year. This doesn't hurt, obviously. Actually, it almost helps with a little bit of value as far as the DFS standpoint there. Obviously, if you have him in season-long leagues, that's unfortunate for you. There'll be no coming back from that. And it actually looks like Charcandrick West instead of Nile Davis is going to be the one to fill in. So we've seen Nile Davis fill in for him before, but West was the first one in there getting run, and he got more carries than Nile Davis. So it's going to be something we need to watch moving forward. Maybe we hear some indication on which guy is officially going to be a starter. But for now, it looks like it's going to be Charcandrick West moving forward. And this is the Chiefs team facing the Vikings next week, so it's not a particularly good matchup anyway. Vikings defense has been above average, at least, if nothing else, so far this season. And, maybe potential timeshare with Davison and West there. But either way, it seems that we see some reports from the Chiefs that this offense is not going to change without Jamaal Charles there. Both these backs are similar type backs, obviously not near the talent level of a Jamaal Charles, but same style of offense. And if anything, it may add some value to guys like Jeremy Maclin, Travis Kelce, and maybe even Alex Smith if they do throw the ball a little bit more, because I'm not a believer that we don't see a little bit more of an aerial attack. There are obviously more weapons in this offense than in past years, so going to certainly be an interesting situation to monitor, but could be potential value as well as we move forward. Next up, Carlos Williams did sit out with the concussion, and this week was an ugly one. Boom Herron didn't even have a contract 10 days ago, got signed this week, and looks like he ended up being the guy. I mean, we saw Boobie Dixon was a popular value play by some people around the industry. He hardly saw any carries at all, saw a couple of catches as well, but really not much. In fact, we saw Boom Herron, the guy who actually really emerged last year for the Colts, kind of carrying the workload as far as you can say, but this was just an awful offensive performance by the Bills, just all the way around. So it's not a good situation moving forward. And this is a team that's hosting the Bengals next week. A fairly stout run defense, but Thomas Ross did have some success against them. So looking forward, if Carlos Williams is able to go, you certainly like him. Looks like LaShawn McCoy going to miss at least a few more weeks anyway. So Herron and Dixon, neither one looked great. But it looks like if Carlos Williams does sit again, Boom Herron's probably the guy that you want to be targeting against the Bengals. And shown that he can pass catch as well. I mean, had some decent games out of the backfield catching the ball late last season in the playoffs as well. So certainly an interesting situation to monitor. Next up, Sammy Watkins. And for the Bills also, looks like he's going to be returning this week. And that's going to really help Tyrod Taylor, who looked just absolutely lost this past week. Not a whole lot of weapons to really worry about. And the Titans pretty much took Charles Clay out, who's his favorite target when Watkins isn't in there. And the Bengals have given up some points there. And they have some solid corners, but not a single one lockdown corner. And Pro Football Focus has Bengals ranked 20th against the pass. And a guy like Tyrod Taylor could certainly make some plays down the field. And we saw Russell Wilson this week make some big plays because of his mobility. Tyrod Taylor, obviously not quite Russell Wilson, but he's the same type of player, moving around in the pocket, scrambling around, looking for plays down the field. And adding Sammy Watkins back in there could certainly add some upside and maybe a little bit more stability for a guy like Tyrod Taylor, who really only bailed out his week with a couple rushing touchdowns this week. Blake Bortles, sprained shoulder, coming off an incredible game, over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson, Allen Squared, these guys look like a very formidable duo as far as wide receivers go in the league. And, I mean, they had a huge game this week. Bortles is expected to play this week against the Texans, and this is the Texans defense that let 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck, who also had the flu and was barely out of the emergency room, have a solid game against them last week. 17th against the pass, the Texans this season. So we're looking at Bortles probably having to throw the ball 30 or more times. And, we've got TJ Yeldon there. He also left with an injury. It looks like he's going to be able to go as well. So assuming that he's fine, maybe we see a little bit more balance this week against the Texans. But the Texans are a really tough run defense, 7th in the league so far. So if for some reason Bortles is not able to suit up, we do have Chad Henne to sit in there. But Chad Henne, a guy that we've seen, have a couple decent games, but certainly not a guy you can rely on. We're talking absolutely deep sleeper, a guy that you put into one of your 50 lineups and you just pray that he has a big game, but certainly not expecting much. Either way, does seem like Bortles likely to play, though. Odell Beckham Jr. from last night, a hamstring injury on the Sunday night game, and he came back out, came on the final drive, and drew a penalty flag, which eventually led to the winning touchdown to Larry Zanell, and he did not look completely healthy at the end. May have been just in there as a decoy, but he did his job, drew that flag, got them in range to score that winning touchdown, and this is an Eagles secondary that certainly is very, very exploitable. So this is going to be a very interesting one to look at because obviously with a hamstring injury, we've seen this before. We've got Alshon Jeffrey, McCoy, Arian Foster. Lots of these guys have dealt with these injuries and sometimes missed quite a bit more time than we thought. So Ruben Randall going to be a guy that really steps into a big-time role here if Odell Beckham can't go or is limited. I think that Randall's in a decent spot anyway against an Eagles secondary that just has not been great in general. Also, Larry Zanell, guy who did catch the winning touchdown, he's one of the favorite targets for Eli Manning as well, so he's a guy that should see a boost as well. If we do see Victor Cruz back, could be interesting, especially if Beckham sits out. So Victor Cruz, another one of those guys, looked like he was going to return either last week or this week, and he didn't. Had a setback in practice, so maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. Going to be really interesting to see moving forward because Eli Manning has looked very good this season. So if we can find ourselves some value in this Giants offense, that's going to be a nice way to target some guys in Week 6. So that will wrap things up for the injury report. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.